In January last year, the contract for the job that I was doing was ending. I needed to decide what I wanted to do next. The obvious choice was to just remain in the field that I have been working on. But there was this other idea, which was a little bit more scary, but also much more exciting. I wanted to become a software developer. So I thought about going back to university, but spending 3 more years there seemed uphill in my mind. So I came up with a different plan. I was going to take 4 months off to learn the skills and technologies that I needed on my own. I'm happy to report that I ended up going for it. And this month, I have had my 1-year anniversary as a software developer at Umbraco. Thank you! Today, I would like to share with you what I learned from my journey so that you can apply it to that cool new thing that you have heard about during Codegarden, or even to realize the grand vision, to change fields, or even to learn a new language. Once I started my project, a lot of people keep mentioning the same topic over and over, and that was failure. People seemed obsessed with failure in learning. So let's make a quick round here. How many of you believe it's possible to fail at learning? How many of you believe it's not possible to fail at learning? I know it was a tricky question. Personally, I don't believe it's possible to fail at learning, unless you have a brain condition that makes it impossible for you to learn. It's pretty hard to fail at learning. You can fail an exam, you can fail to reach a goal by a specific deadline, or you can fail to meet someone's expectations. But all of this is not definitive. Maybe all this meant was that you needed more time, a different approach, or to question if the goal was still meaningful. The process of learning wasn't complete. So from this I learned that the process of learning is a bit of a mystery for people. So let's explore it. I would like to present you to a neuron. You have billions of them in your brain. Neurons rarely work alone. Instead, they connect with other neurons by placing their action terminals close to the dendrites of others. So they use their finger-like structures, and they place them close to what looks like pointy hair. Once they do this, they can form very long chains of connected neurons. These are called neural pathways. Neural pathways are fascinating. It's what allows you to remember concepts, to make complex movements, and also to learn. So the connections between neurons are not fixed. Your brain uses a rule called use it or lose it. If you use a neural pathway over and over, your brain will take that as a sign of importance, and it will start upgrading that connection. It will do so by placing extra insulation in the axon so that the messages can travel across more efficiently. It will do the opposite if there's a certain connection you are not using. It will start downgrading it, and sometimes even removing it. It does this because all your brain wants is that you survive. And it considers that whatever you use the most often is probably what will keep you safe in your environment. So, what is learning? Learning is the process of creating and strengthening the connections between neurons so their communication becomes more efficient. I know this can be a bit of a tricky new concept to understand. So let's see an example. Let's imagine that now you have the ambition to learn how to swim butterfly, the style of swimming where you use both your arms and your legs in coordination. You might be a little bit surprised when processes that you thought you had mastered, such as breathing, becomes a real challenge. Coordinating your arms and legs in synchrony can be a little bit tricky. This is because your neural pathways haven't had enough practice. They are new in the job. So they don't communicate well, they do the wrong movement at the wrong time, they forget maybe some parts of it, and in general, they waste a lot of effort. But this state is not permanent. If you keep practicing for maybe a few months or years, your neurons will get more and more practice. Their connections will start getting upgraded over and over. So a movement that you found extremely challenging, or just the act of breathing, will become easier and easier. By the end, your movements are just beautiful, and you glide through the water. You can even, at some point, it becomes so automatic that you can start thinking about other things while swimming, something that was unthinkable when you started practicing. So now that we have seen how you actually learn, we are ready to create your own learning strategy. For this, I would like you to take something to write down on. We are going to be doing some exercises together. For those of you, I can almost see you around. You are having a thought in your brain saying, I will only listen. And then at home, later, I will do it. I will recommend you to just take the path of least resistance and do it now. You can always finish it at home later. Great. So we are ready to start. Every journey starts with a vision. So let's find yours. I would like you to close your eyes, if that's comfortable to you, and then try to think which skill, knowledge, or ability would you like to have that you don't have yet. If you have multiple visions popping out in your head, just choose the one that seems more meaningful or exciting to you. Once you have it, just open your eyes and try to write it down in a sentence. This doesn't need to be perfect. We are going to refine it really soon. Great, I see some people are finished, some are not. Let's continue. So sometimes your vision might be too broad, which can lead to a lot of unfocused effort. So it's important to try to make it specific. I would like you to complete this sentence. I want to learn X so that I can Y in approximately Z. Z being the amount of days, months, or years that you expect it to take. Okay, the next one is meaningful. A vision can be really specific, but not meaningful to you. So I would like you to ask yourself, what will be the consequence of not doing any progress towards the vision that you just set? A common pitfall I have seen when setting the vision is to be too ambitious too early, setting a vision so high that part of you already knows it's not going to happen. I have done this mistake myself. I used to compete in triathlons, the sport where you swim, bike, and run. Initially, when I started, I didn't know how to swim crawl. I have never rode those bikes where you clip yourself in, and I could run, but not that well. But my ambitions were really, really high. My goal was to become an elite triathlete. So, in retrospect, it's a little bit embarrassing to admit that in the first year, when I needed to set my sporting goals for that year, what I did was to go to a website where I could see the results from an elite triathlon competition. Then I took the best swimming time, the best cycling time. I think you know where this is going. Then I took the best running time. Those became my goals for that year. Probably, yeah, you're not surprised to hear that I didn't hit those goals. Not even close. And sadly, I managed to get injured in the process. So the second year, I learned from my mistakes, and I was still really ambitious, but instead, I made a 10-year plan, which had more realistic goals for each year, ending with my really big and ambitious goal at the end. So if you are in my club, a bit too ambitious for your own good, please don't give up on your big vision. Instead, try to break it down into smaller journeys. This will allow you to get a sense of progress, which you need if you want to be able to persevere in the long term. 1 kilometer in a 10-kilometer journey seems like meaningful progress. 1 kilometer in a 1,000-kilometer journey, not as much. So we got your vision. Now we need to find time. Before we do the next exercise, I would like to tell you a secret. Are you ready? Your life is going to be as messy and unpredictable during your learning process as it is now. I know that maybe this is a bit of a silly confession, but there's the studied human bias. When we try to plan for our future selves, we imagine them as this flawless being that has a life that always goes according to plan. So during the next exercise, I would like you to stay with your current self and life. Forget that flawless being in the future. Stay present with your current one. Now that we have cleared that up, we are ready to start. I would like you to visualize, starting from Monday, what do you normally do that day? With the goal of finding, do you have any time on Monday to dedicate to learning? Once you are done with Monday, you just follow the rest of the week. I don't think you will have time to complete all of it, but you have just gotten started, which is the hardest part. So try to start, visualize your Monday, try to think, how much time do I have for learning there? At the end, you could have the name of the day, for example, Monday, and the amount of minutes or hours in the side. Okay, let's try to continue. By now, you will probably have guessed that learning takes time. And one of the hardest times during learning are the initial phases. For example, while learning to swim, crawl. Everything is just a struggle. When I started learning C#, nothing made any sense. And each time I practiced, instead of clearing the confusion, it just created more. Once I was in the peak of my frustration. One of my friends, which is here in the audience, asked me, "How are you doing?" And internally, all I wanted to say was, "This is horrible, and I hope this learning could just inject into my brain." But instead, I paused, reflected, and said, "Honestly, right now, nothing makes any sense. But I trust that if I keep going, it will eventually do." And it did. It's really important during the first phase of learning to hold on to the belief that you will eventually succeed at learning. This will help you to persevere when you hit obstacles or errors over and over and over. So next, we have found your vision. We have found time to practice. So what should we do with that practice? Depending what you want to learn, the way you need to practice will be different. But in general, the best type of practice is the one that you can do consistently over a long period of time. You need to try to find a practice that combines the sweet spot between challenge and enjoyment. If you find a learning method that is really, really enjoyable and fun, but is not challenging enough, there will be not much learning out of that. You can try to go the total different extreme and pick the hardest method you can find. But if it's too hard, you will spend hours or maybe days dreading the suffering that awaits you. So it's important to try to find the sweet spot between the two. When I was learning, I had 3 main resources: Microsoft documentation, an e-learning academy, and developer roadmaps. Every week, based on the amount of time I had, I will plan which concepts I wanted to learn and which resources made the most sense. Initially, just watching a video or reading an article was challenging enough. But at some point, when my level increased, I also raised the level of difficulty. I started using techniques that forced me to process the information more deeply. Instead of only watching or reading, I will also start asking myself, do I understand the concepts that I'm being presented with? How can I organize these concepts in a way that makes sense to me. And finally, I asked a very important question: how does this knowledge connect to what I already know? It is really, really important to realize that you have an adult brain. And adult brains rarely start from scratch. So every time you present your brain with a new concept or skill, it will try to look through its neural pathways and try to figure out, do I have some neural pathway that is similar to the task or knowledge that I'm being presented with? That will become the starting point to create new connections or to strengthen the existing ones. If you are listening to these methods and thinking, wow, that sounds like so much effort, you are completely right. This type of methods take more effort, but they are also much more effective. It's important to avoid marathon sessions, 5-hour sessions of study that leave your mind exhausted. You should try to split your study sessions in shorter periods of time, split over multiple days. This will allow your brain to process each chunk so that it doesn't get overwhelmed. So, if you have your vision, time, and practice, you're actually ready to start. But some journeys end before they take off. And that's due to procrastination. Procrastination is when we actively avoid an activity that we find either difficult or unpleasant in some other way. Before I even started my learning project, I've spent months pondering with this question: should I learn front-end development, or should I learn back-end development? I asked people around, I read a lot of articles, and thought for many, many hours. No matter how much I tried, I couldn't reach a conclusion. I was stuck. Seeing it from my perspective now, I realized I was procrastinating. I was terrified of starting. So instead, I gave myself a sense of progress by getting stuck in this unproductive loop. It served me as a way to avoid what I most feared. So if you find yourself procrastinating, try to ask yourself, what is the belief or feeling that I am trying to avoid? For me, to get unstuck, what I did was to realize I had this fear, and I saw that the most important thing was to make progress. So I just picked back-end development and thought, if it turns out I hate it, I can always change later. So you have started now, and you are getting some progress. I would recommend you to take some time once in a while to reflect about your learning strategy and approach. You could ask questions such as, is my vision still meaningful? Are the methods that I'm using challenging or enjoyable enough? Having this kind of reflection will make sure that your learning strategy stays current to you and your current circumstances. Our time together is coming to an end. We have covered a lot today. We found your vision. We looked at your schedule to get time. We tried to see which kind of criteria should you have to select a learning method. And we talked about the importance of reflecting during your process. I need to be really, really honest with you. Learning takes both time and effort. But in my opinion, is one of the coolest skills that we have. If you know how to learn effectively, you basically can get any other skill. So it is my hope that after today, if you find yourself struggling to learn something, you will pause, breathe, and tell yourself, my neurons are working really, really hard right now to figure this out. I just need to keep practicing. Thank you.